So, let's start. Number 9. Buttonhooks. Back in the Victorian era, fashion wasn't just fancy, it was high maintenance. Take boots, for example. They didn't have zippers or elastic. Nope. Just rows of tiny stiff buttons that were basically impossible to fasten without a special tool called a button hook. This wasn't some optional accessory, it was essential. A metal hook on a handle, slip it through the buttonhole, snag the button, pull it through. Without it, you'd be stuck halfway into your boots, shouting for help. Every household had at least one. Some were fancy with ivory handles or monograms. People carried them like we carry phone chargers, and it wasn't just for boots. Button hooks were used on gloves, corsets, even kids' clothes. If you were dressing for a formal event and couldn't find your button hook, your whole morning fell apart. It was basically the Victorian version of misplacing your car keys, total panic. But then came zippers, and the button hook's glory days were over. Suddenly, you didn't need a tool and a prayer just to get dressed. The once indispensable button hook ended up in junk drawers, antique shops, or forgotten in old trunks. Unless you're into historical fashion, you've probably never seen one. But back then, that little hook was the difference between a dignified entrance and being stuck in your room, barefoot and half-dressed. Number 8. Chamber pots, your bedside toilet buddy. Before indoor plumbing, using the bathroom at night wasn't just a hassle, it was a full-on mission. That's why people kept chamber pots under their beds, a literal bowl to pee in, sitting right next to their slippers. They came in all sorts of designs. The cheaper ones were made of clay or metal. Wealthier folks had porcelain versions, sometimes decorated with gold accents and paired with fancy wash basins. Some were even built into furniture, tucked inside cabinets or disguised as stools. Hotels provided them, travelers carried them, everyone had one. And yes, it was kind of disgusting, but it beat the alternative, wandering outside in the cold and dark, especially in places like Versailles, where the plumbing was famously bad. Chamber pots were everywhere. Some parts of the palace practically depended on them. The morning routine? Empty the pot before someone accidentally kicks it over. It wasn't elegant, but it was everyday life. People didn't talk about them much, but they absolutely depended on them. The chamber pot was basically the 18th century version of having a bathroom within arm's reach. Gross? For sure. But for generations, it was the go-to solution for nighttime bathroom needs. Number 7. Wig powder. In the 1700s, nothing screamed, "I'm important," like a big old powdered wig. Judges, aristocrats, military officers, everyone with status was strutting around with a head full of white fluff. And it wasn't their real hair. These wigs were often made from horsehair or human hair, and they needed constant maintenance. Enter wig powder. A fine, often scented dust, usually white but sometimes gray or bluish, that you puffed onto your wig to keep it fresh, stiff, and fashionably pale. Powdering your wig was such a big deal that there were powder rooms dedicated to it. Literally, that's where the term comes from. It was messy. You'd wear a cape to keep powder off your clothes, and servants would shoot the powder on with bellows or shakers. Your whole day might smell like lavender or orris root, depending on how fancy you were. Some people even added flour to save money, which, yes, meant rats sometimes got involved. But powdered wigs weren't just about fashion. They signaled wealth, cleanliness, and political allegiance. And by the late 1700s, they were so tied to the elite that during the French Revolution, powdering your wig could get you labeled as an enemy of the people. Eventually, fashion shifted. People ditched wigs for natural hairstyles, and powdered hair became passé. But for a solid century, if your head wasn't frosted like a wedding cake, you clearly weren't in charge of anything. Number 6. Iceboxes, the refrigerators before electricity. Before refrigerators had hums, lights, and compressors, people kept food cold with a literal box filled with ice. Hence the name icebox. Think of it like a cooler disguised as furniture. It looked like a cabinet, but inside were compartments lined with tin or zinc. One of them held a giant block of ice. That's it. That was your fridge. Ice boxes were common in homes from the mid-19th centuries to the early 20th centuries. You didn't plug them in, you scheduled ice deliveries. The Iceman showed up with huge tongs, dropped a chunk into your box, and went on to the next house. You hung a sign in your window to let him know how much ice you needed that day. It wasn't perfect. Ice melted, water dripped. The box needed constant cleaning, and if the Iceman was late on a hot day, goodbye leftovers. Plus, people had to organize their food carefully. Dairy near the ice, meat lower down, butter in its own compartment, or it'd turn into soup. Still, the icebox revolutionized how people stored food. Before that, it was all about salting, pickling, or burying things in the ground like squirrels. The icebox made fresh food more accessible and paved the way for modern refrigeration. Number 5. Hair receivers. Victorian recycling for hair. Victorians were weirdly thrifty and a little obsessed with hair. Enter the hair receiver, a small decorative jar with a hole in the lid, sitting pretty on a lady's vanity. Its job? To collect hair from your brush. Ladies would brush their hair daily, then pull the loose strands from the bristles and stuff them into the hair receiver. Once enough hair had built up, they'd turn it into rats, small cushions used to puff up hairstyles, kind of like early bumpets. It was your own hair, repurposed to give you that voluminous updo. But it didn't stop there. Hair was also used to make jewelry like braided lockets or bracelets, especially as mourning keepsakes. Hair was sentimental, and collecting it was seen as both thrifty and tender. Hair receivers came in beautiful ceramic sets with matching powder jars and perfume bottles. Some had silver lids. They weren't weird back then, they were elegant. Today they mostly confuse antique collectors. What's this fancy jar with a hole in it? Yeah, that's where your great-great-grandma kept her shed hair. Gross? Maybe. Genius? Definitely. Number 4. Flirtation fans, the original text messaging. Long before Tinder and texting, there was an elite communication system hidden in plain sight, the flirtation fan. In the 18th and 19th centuries, women carried hand fans not just for fashion or cooling off, but to send coded messages in public without saying a word. There was an entire fan language. Holding the fan to your heart meant, I love you. Dropping it meant, we can't be together. Fanning quickly meant, I'm engaged, slowly. I'm single. You could practically have a full rom-com conversation. Of course, not everyone actually used this language, but it was popularized in etiquette books and whispered about in gossip circles. Fans were also props, used to hide smiles, peek flirtatiously, or cover reactions during scandalous conversations. And these fans were fancy, made of lace, silk, ivory, even ostrich feathers. Some had secret compartments or painted scenes of lovers and mythology. They were the ultimate fashion meets function accessory. Eventually, the fans' role faded as courtship customs changed and, people started talking directly. But for a time, if you were a lady at a ball, your fan wasn't just a breeze maker. It was your romantic Morse code. Number 3, hatpins. Hatpins were long, decorative needles used to anchor a woman's hat to her hair. Sounds innocent, right? But in the early 1900s, these things were serious. Some were nearly a foot long. They weren't just accessories, they were potential weapons. With women gaining more independence, riding bicycles, walking alone, even marching for suffrage, hatpins took on a new role. There were actual cases of women using hatpins in self-defense, stabbing would-be attackers or harassers on public transport. Newspapers freaked out. Cities tried to regulate the length of hatpins. Some even demanded metal caps on the ends so people wouldn't get poked by accident. Despite the controversy, hatpins were also fashion statements. Made of glass, pearls, or precious metals, they matched outfits or made political statements. There were hatpin holders, hatpin stands, and collectors today still treasure them. So yeah, hatpins, equal parts, fashion, function, and feminist symbol. Number 2, calling cards, the social networking before Wi-Fi. Before messages or phone calls, there were calling cards. These little rectangular cards were how you said, hey, I stopped by. People left them at friends' houses, tucked into silver trays by the door, no voicemail. Just your name, maybe a flourish or title, printed elegantly on thick cardstock. There were rules. If you folded a corner, it meant you dropped it off yourself. If you wrote a note, it meant you really wanted a visit back. No folding? Your servant probably left it, and there were different cards for different people. Some even had gold edges or monograms. The whole system was basically Victorian Facebook. Who visited whom, how often, and what kind of stationery they used said everything about your social life. And yes, people judged. The wrong card or bad timing could wreck your social standing. Eventually, telephones and less formal customs killed off the calling card, but for a while, if your tray was empty, it meant no one cared. Number 1. Tooth Keys, the horror movie version of Dentistry. Let's end with something truly terrifying: tooth keys. Before modern dental tools, if you needed a tooth pulled, dentists or barbers or random guys with strong arms used a tool that looked like a metal door key from your nightmares. The tooth key had a claw that gripped the tooth and a handle that twisted. You lock onto the tooth and yank it out by rotating the key like you're opening a vault. It worked, sort of. It also shattered teeth or gums or jaws. It was medieval level brutal. But hey, it was faster than chisels, and if you lived in a time when anesthesia didn't exist, speed mattered. Still, it was basically dental roulette. Sometimes the whole tooth came out. Sometimes just pieces. Eventually, forceps replaced the tooth key, and modern dentistry took mercy on us all. But the next time you complain about a little Novocaine sting, just remember, 200 years ago, someone was cranking a giant metal claw into your face and calling it a solution. Thank you for watching and sticking till the end. We've got plenty more videos coming in the future. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. See you in the next one.